your question comes around body corporates. A new buyer purchased a property in a sectional scheme, and first month comes, and the levy statement comes out, and bam, this special levy, right? Now, apparently, the special levy is with respect to maintenance and repairs. The previous owner had been paying it for 2.5 years, and these maintenance and repairs seemingly were also being carried out over the last 2.5 years. So the question by this buyer is, why should he pay a special levy when the previous owner had been paying a special levy for the last 2.5 years?
Perfect. So just to start off with dealing with sectional schemes, we know what sectional schemes are. Okay, it's a structure of ownership that has been recognized in South Africa where people buy into a particular scheme and you own something, a section within the scheme of a certain quota, so a participation quota. And part of what the sectional scheme does is it gets all of the owners in this particular scheme, however many there are, to contribute to the success of the scheme and the finances of the scheme. And that, depending on what kind of scheme it is, what is in this sectional scheme, comes with certain costs. Okay, so there's obviously a cost with regards to your participation quota generally. So what that means is you own a certain percentage of the pie. Okay, and you obviously have a cost implication with regards to that particular percentage. That is your participation quota. So to make it as simple as possible, if you have 2 owners in a sectional scheme, your participation quota is essentially 50-50. If you have 10, it's essentially 10%. Okay, doesn't have to be, because obviously we deal with things like common property or areas which are specific use to a particular unit. But for an example, that's what you're dealing with in the circumstances. On top of that, there are certain other things that exist within a scheme that might need to be covered. So, for instance, certain body corporates are just a building, okay? And so your participation quotas are very close to what I gave earlier. But other body corporates can become much more complex, and they have things in them that need looking after. So you can buy into a nice sectional scheme that has, for instance, gardens that are part of the common property, that have ponds or rivers running through them. I've even seen, body corporates that have wild animals that are in the particular body corporate, and those wild animals need to be looked after. Okay. And so when you are buying into a body corporate, into a sectional scheme, you need to understand very carefully what are the expectations when you buy into this particular scheme. Okay, it is a critical mistake if you are planning to buy into a scheme and you just look at the unit that you are buying and go, that's a really nice unit, I'd love to be part of it. Okay, because that is not the only obligation that you are going to have if you buy into a scheme. And so when you are considering whether you should buy into a body corporate or not, it is critically important that you do research before you buy this place, before you put in an offer, to have a look at what are the financial implications of. The easiest way to do this is to look at the person you are purchasing from. So the person you are purchasing the property from is already getting a monthly levy statement from the body corporate. And that statement is going to set out what are the charges that they are paying every month already to the body corporate for owning that particular property. Go look at that statement. It's the easiest thing to look at to determine exactly what your obligations are. It's going to have charges on that particular statement that if you were the owner, you would be the one carrying those particular charges. Now, it's critically important you look at that before you buy a property, because in terms of that statement, there can be a number of things which you might not anticipate, but which are being charged. Okay, for instance, everybody corporate is sectional scheme is expected to have a reserve fund, okay, which is a set of money, okay, 25% of the annual returns that the body corporate takes set aside, which is there so that the body corporate has a safety net in case something needs to happen with respect to the body corporate. a minimum value of 25% is needed. And if that 25% is not set aside, the body corporate is legislatively imposed to set aside a certain amount towards that reserve fund every single month. Okay, it's 15% of the levies that come in. That needs to go to the reserve fund. And the way the body corporates deal with this is they impose a reserve fund levy. Okay, this is just an example. That is something which you might not anticipate you have to pay, but if you look into the statements, okay, you will see that there might be a reserve fund levy. Same thing with a special levy. A special levy is a resolution taken by the body corporate to address certain issues that might exist within the body corporate. That can be, for instance, say they've fallen short on utilities owing to the body corporate. There was something that's gone broken or missing or whatever the case is. Or even in the case that we've been given, they wanted to do some renovations on the property, upgrades, etc. What a body corporate will very often do is set out, and they will resolve in an annual general meeting, that a special levy is going to be taken out, okay, and that each party must participate towards that special levy. So this is something that you need to look at, and I say look at the levy statement of the previous owner, because that's the easiest way to digest what exactly your expectations are. Once you've looked at that levy statement and you see, hey, I see there's a special levy that's being applied to this particular owner, that is your opportunity to then go and do actual research to go and find out what that levy is. So you want to be looking at what the minutes of the annual general meeting for every year, find out what exactly this levy is, what it relates to, and importantly, how long it's going to last. Because if there is a special levy imposed, have they done it for a limited period, or is this an ongoing levy that essentially they're going to wrap up at some future time that's maybe not even minuted at this point? Okay, these are the considerations you have to have a look at. Start with the levy statement. Don't end at the levy statement. Go into the financials. Ask the questions that you need to, either from the trustees in place at the time, or if there is a managing agent, ask the questions from the managing agent. These things are critically important before you decide to put in your offer for the property. Because our question today is an owner who is basically saying, look, as he understands that the special levy has already been paid for 2.5 years, and he doesn't understand why now he's the purchaser of the property, why he is liable for this levy in the circumstances. But the truth is, if you are an owner and the special levy has been implemented and you take ownership of this property during that period where the special levy is being implemented, you as the owner are liable together with all the other owners of the scheme to cover this amount. Unless there's some sort of special way that the special levy has been implemented, you can't simply argue, no, I'm a new owner and I didn't agree to the special levy at the time it was implemented, therefore I'm not paying it. Absolutely not. When you buy into the scheme is a contractual relationship between you as the owner of the particular property and the scheme as the entity who's running that particular scheme. And you are buying into that contract with all of its niggles with it. So please be very careful. It's not something you can walk in and go, I don't feel like paying these particular levies. You're liable for them as an owner. You had absolutely no obligation to buy into the scheme. And so if you did buy into the scheme, that is now your obligation. Please be very careful. Please do your research when you are buying into a sectional scheme. I know it is a system that's been created in South Africa that actually does have a lot of benefits, because it means that people can access property who would not in the past have been able to. Okay, so it used to be that you had to buy full title properties. It was an expensive endeavor, and this is a way that the law has developed to allow people to access property who might not have been able to in the past. So it is a brilliant tool, but you need to do your research. You need to know what you're getting yourself into. So unfortunately for our writer in today, it does look like this is something that's going to bind you in the circumstances, and you're going to have to pay that levy.
Thanks, Nick.
Perfect. Thank you, Bruno. And that brings us to the end. We will see you next week.
Awesome. Have a good one.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.